Should be coming at you here pretty quick. Hopefully, if we can get this thing working. Let's check switchboard. Yeah, looking like the group should be live. Instagram's down. That's okay. Cool. I see me down there. So let me unpin the previous week's video because I know Wayne was lost and got his T's dotted and his I's crossed. Should be in now. I'm seeing me in beautiful Book Career blue in the temporary office again, guest room. The real office is not going well, folks. It's it's there. It's a room. I've got the fourth coat of paint on everything. I hate painting, so I've been putting off touch-ups and all that, and it's taken forever to get anywhere near what I want. And the problem is, once I finish painting the damn thing, I still have to put the floor in, because I decided to rip up the carpet and all that. I still have to get a desk, and I decided, I'm just going to go back and get into woodworking again, and I'm going to pick out like a 9-foot cherry slab or some kind of, maybe black walnut, and do like a black epoxy middle, and it's the whole thing. It's going to take forever. I don't think I'll ever be done. This is my new office. I'm just going to call it what it is. This is where we are now. Hope you like it. Hey, Joan. Good morning from Bakersfield. Yeah, it is good for live streams, right? My hair's not, but this room is nice and bright. I've got some natural light down here. I don't have that in my current office, which is good because I'll be able to light it how I want. But this is nice because I can just turn the lights on, open the window, and have a pretty decent live stream without having to futz with lighting at all. So yeah, it works pretty well. Patty Fan, good evening. What time is it over there across the pond? Dale's with us. That's pretty cool. If you guys, if you haven't watched Dale, as in self-publishing with Dale, his new video dropped about him writing a book in a week. I'm proud of him, man. I'm proud of you, brother. I'm proud of you. Watch it. It's a great video. Fantastic. He gets deep. I watched it yesterday. He gets deep into the process, the mindset, which is big, as you know, I always talk about that, of writing quickly and pushing yourself. And it's pretty cool. My favorite part of the video, of course, is the ending. Wink, wink. So go watch the video. Don't just skip to the end. Watch the whole thing. Yeah, celebrity sighting. I'm assuming you're talking about Patty or Dale or Randall. I mean, we've got a lot of celebrities in here. I'm a pretty big deal, guys. My office smells like rich mahogany. I have many leather-bound books. 5 p.m. over. I'm assuming you're Dublin, man? Is that Dublin area? I don't know anything about Ireland other than it's an island off the coast of Antarctica, I think. Pretty sure. And I think there's one city in it, and that's Dublin. So I could be wrong. But I grew up in Texas where geography is taught like this. Here's Texas. Tacos come from down here, and white people come from up here. And that was, I wish I was kidding. That's kind of how they just taught everything. So I don't know anything about geography. What's up, everybody? Thanks for being here. Appreciate you being with us today. We're talking about something pretty important, and I believe this might be the first time we're diving into something not directly marketing related. Well, that's not true. I guess we've done some things, some indirect stuff like talking about mindset, productivity. We do a lot of that. Those happen to be things that I feel pretty comfortable talking about, not because I'm an expert in those, but because I'm very deep in trying to figure out how to be more productive myself and how to change my own mindset. So I tend, I'm not going to give you information about stuff I'm just making up, stuff I don't know, right? And so it's challenging because I want to talk about craft. This whole group is about, the craft of marketing and the marketing of our craft. It's all one and the same, or I should say two sides to the same coin. And that's great, but I've never been a craft guy. I don't think I'm a very good writer, right? I feel like I'm good enough. Obviously, my books are selling. I write thrillers, action, adventure, that kind of stuff. But I have never been good at world building, which is why I stick to modern day thrillers. I'm like, hey, it's a gun. You know what those look like. That's what it is. I don't have to describe it. I don't want to make something up. I can't write sci-fi, And as far, I start writing sci-fi or space opera or something, and I'm like, I don't know how the ship moves. It's got like a big propeller that shoots ether through it. Figure it out. So I'm not very good at that stuff, so I shy away from it. So that's why I leaned in on thrillers. because it's all modern day, it's all real, and I feel like the world building I don't really have to do. I'm like, all right, they're in Russia. You know what Russia looks like, right? Like the guys with the hats, and it's cold. There's Kremlin in the background of every shot. That's where we are, right? Anyway, joking aside, craft is absolutely crucial to what we do. And so I want to bring stuff about craft, stuff regarding the craft of doing this thing that we do called writing fiction. But on the other side of it is I don't feel like I'm the best person to teach craft. I'm learning a lot of this stuff as I'm telling you. So I'm going to try to do better. I don't think that I have to be the world's foremost expert in, world building to be able to teach something about world building, but there are better people for the job. And so I'm going to try to bring on some people to do that kind of thing. Patty, I know, is fantastic at this. Maybe he'd like to come in and, teach us about world building. So there's all kinds of stuff like that where, if it's more marketing focused, first of all, you guys are talking about marketing a lot. And so I'm like, hey, yeah, if marketing is the thing that we need, let's talk marketing. But the other side is I know marketing. I like marketing. It's not scary to me. And I've got a background in it. So,
Just
hey,
kidding.
okay, there's kids running around here. Hey guys, I need you out of the room. Okay, get your stuff and go. Sorry, I thought this was clear before I came in the office and said don't come in the room. But oh well, it's all right. We haven't really started yet, so we get to cut all this stuff out. Good morning everybody. Kirk, welcome. Hey, I need Kirk. Kaylee, hurry up. Okay, then leave. Come back later. It's not going anywhere. Shut the door, please. Thank you, baby. Don't ever have kids. No, I'm just kidding. She's sweet. There's just just mom's out doing something, and I'm like, hey, you guys never ever want to bother me or talk to me or anything because I'm your dad and you guys don't care until I get on a live call, not something that's not pre-recorded. So anyway, who cares? No big deal. We're gonna roll with it. As I said, we kind of fart around for a few minutes anyway, but we'll get started here. But the whole point of all that to say, we're going to talk about something that I do feel like I've become an expert in just because I've had to do it so much, and that is editing. Megan says that was the mistake. It really is. Like, hey, don't bother. Do not open the door. The first thing they're going to be like is, I'm going to open the door. You're absolutely right. If anybody's got kids, that's so totally true. So anyway, look, we're going to talk about editing, and this is going to be a little bit different than what you might expect. There are really good books. There's actually a book called on self-editing. I think it's just self-editing for authors. Very good. I recommend, do your own research, read the books, do all the stuff. This is my perspective. This is my take. I'm not coming at you with this is the way you should do it, but I'm coming at you with here's what I got and here's kind of how I approach this stuff. As you all know, I work for Drafted Digital, so I get to see a lot of content that comes through. I own a publishing company as well that Matt and I run together, and we get to we kind of develop this process for that. But really, this all came from my own experience as an author. I've written 40-something novels, and I've tried, I feel like, everything under the sun when it comes to editing. So we're going to talk about editing today and how to do it. And we're going to get into some stuff, but mainly I'm going to show you my framework for this and how I approach it and all the different pieces of it. And you can pick and choose, like anything else I ever tell you, you can pick and choose what you want to use. You can ignore me completely, or you can use a particular element that makes sense to you. But I urge you to push forward with the mindset that there might be something here you can glean, some knowledge you might be able to pick up and put into play right now in your own author career. Because, and this is a great way to start, every book needs to be edited. It's not enough to write a first draft and think that we're amazing and publish it. I have read some amazing books that were very well structured, and there was a typo every other word that the author just didn't catch. And then on the flip side, there's authors who write almost perfectly clean first drafts, and I've seen these things, and the author's obviously very proud of themselves for being able to do it, but it's structured abysmally. Like it doesn't make any sense. It's kind of what is happening. It doesn't make great. Your prose is fine, your lines are fine, and the copy's all edited well, but there's no structural development editing, right? So we're going to talk about the different kinds of editing and how they play into the role of an independent author, somebody who doesn't have the backing of a traditional publisher. If you do have that, you really don't need to worry about it because that's their job, and any traditional publisher should provide you that service. You should not pay for that service, right? The money flows to the author, not away from it in traditional publishing. So if you have a deal that you think is traditional and they're asking you to pay money for things like anything, run away, because it's not a traditional deal. That's what we call a hybrid deal, or really a vanity deal, a vanity press. And they've started calling themselves hybrid because they want to kind of pretend like they're doing something, above board, when in fact they're ripping you off. And so anyway, we're not talking about publishing. We did do a talk on that earlier this year, I think, but so you can go listen to my thoughts on that. But when you are getting your book published by a traditional, like a real legitimate traditional publisher, the kind of company, the kind of firm that takes the project on and pushes it through completion, the only thing you have to do as the author is write the book. They will handle all of the edits, and their process is going to be different from different other publishers. But generally speaking, they're going to take your first self-edited first draft, maybe second draft even, and they're going to run it through their own editing process, and they're going to spit out a nice, clean, squeaky, polished book. That's their job, right? And then back in the day, they used to actually market the damn thing too, but they're not doing that anymore either. That's kind of on you. So most of you, and myself included, I have traditional contracts. I did a commission deal with Amazon back in the day, and I've worked for Hachette with the 3-book series that I've now bought the rights back to. So I know what I'm talking about when it comes to editing processes, and I have found more often than not, I prefer to do all this stuff myself. Now, I don't mean self-edit the book where I'm the only eyeballs that are on it before the product goes out the door. I'm just saying I prefer to maintain control of the project from start to finish. So I want to be the publisher, which is what self-publishing really is, right? It's not enough these days, and you all know this, but it's not enough to just say I'm a writer self-publishing my book and all I do is write, because then there's all this other stuff like cover design, editing, of course, layout, marketing that has to get done. And if you don't want to do it, you need to find somebody else who will, partner with them or pay a firm to do a particular piece. And editing is no different. So every book needs to be edited, but you don't have to be the person to do it. And I would even go a step further and say you probably shouldn't be the only person doing it. So that's what we're going to talk about today, is as the independent author, the self-published author, how do we maintain our control of the process without having to be the editor? And before we get into that, I want to say why I believe it's important we're not the editor. So when I say I want to go a step further and say that we shouldn't be the one who's the only person who's seen it, what I'm saying is it's hard to look at your baby, right? Kids come in the room and point out flaws. Of course. And our books are our babies. Our books are no different. And so it's not just hard, it's sometimes impossible to see flaws in those things. It's impossible to see typos. How many of you remember back in like 5th grade when they were teaching us some of these English tools or whatever language you grew up with? For me, our English teachers were like, all right, you need to take this paper and then read it backwards, one word at a time, to be able to catch missing words or typos and things like that. It kind of made sense, kind of didn't. But the point was, you have to look at this baby of yours with fresh eyes, with new eyes. And that is something you can get better at with tools like, the resources I gave you, like self-editing for authors, I think is what it's called. Books like that can help you, but it's not really possible to be perfect at this job. I've worked with a lot of editors. I don't think it's possible for any editor to be perfect as an editor for someone else's book, so much less your own. So for those reasons, I think it's really important to say, hey, self-editing isn't really just me, the author, looking at my book and then saying, yeah, it's good enough, let's publish it. It's really about figuring out what pieces need to be outsourced to someone else, or which pieces you can do, and then which pieces you can build a system or a process to have done for you. And that's what we're going to talk about, okay? So editing for fiction authors really comes down to three different types of editing. And you've heard of these, you know what they are. We're going to kind of quickly talk about them because in a traditional house, especially the old school guys, they would go through these 3 separate rounds, and they were very separate. And usually they would have, my books actually were edited by 3 separate people each time. The main one, I should say the first one that we usually try to tackle is the developmental, sometimes called structural, although that's a little bit different. But you kind of mash them together. A developmental or a dev edit, a structural edit. This is sort of the first overarching view of our book from kind of a bird's eye view. We're not looking at individual words and lines, typos and things like that. We're looking at, does this book work? from start to finish. Is there anything that needs to be fixed? Is he, wearing a blue shirt at the beginning and he's a red shirt at the end? That gets down into line editing because it's individual instances. But this is plot holes, right? We're looking for inconsistencies in plot. We're looking for things that don't really work. If there's, hey, the plot checks out structurally, but maybe the villain doesn't really, grab us. The antagonist doesn't really. We feel like we can't root for the antagonist, or at least understand their perspective. This is where a good structural editor or developmental editor can come in and diagnose that problem for us and say, hey, your antagonist is very evil and wants to kill the good guy, but it'd be a little bit better if we could at least understand their perspective, and you can kind of flavor that a little bit, touch on that earlier in the book, right? So the point is, this is the first big round of edits that we usually get, and for me personally, what that looked like was I would send my book to my acquisitions editor at the publishing company. Sorry. And she was the person I worked. She was like my point of contact. But she would send that internally to somebody on her team who did the developmental edit. And she would also make a page of notes, a few pages of notes in Word and send them to me. So I had these two people individually looking at my book separately and then sending their feedback to me. And with that 2 or 3 page document, I could go through and kind of answer questions. And so it's sort of like the back of some books have the group discussion or the Bible study questions, right? That's what I would get. I'd get these questions like, hey, explain why this makes sense, because it didn't make sense in the book. And so I would take that and go, oh, I should probably clarify that. And I could put that back in and clarify. That's the first phase. The second phase is line editing. So we're getting a little bit deeper into the book. We're going line by line. An editor is going line by line, going, does this sentence make sense? Or does this paragraph make sense? So forget the structural. They don't really care about that. We're assuming that's already happened, or it's happening on the other side. But the line editor will come in and say, all right, look, Nick, you got this paragraph where, at the beginning of the paragraph, he's driving 60 miles an hour. And at the end of the paragraph, he's on a motorcycle driving, 30 miles an hour. That doesn't make sense. You got to, it's pretty egregious error that I don't think I would do. But that's what they do. They come in and they look at that. Or they might say, hey, the structure, the syntax of this particular sentence doesn't make sense. You've got, prepositions at the end of a phrase. And according, to William Churchill, he said, that is one rule up with which I will not put. But most line editors will put up with that, or won't put up with that. I don't know what I'm trying to say. They don't want prepositions at the end of a sentence, and they'll try to, fix it for you. And it depends on the editor, right? Some people are more literary. They want the grammar to be perfect, regardless of your own voice or, style as an author. And so these are really important things to consider. If you don't have a traditional publisher and really don't have a choice, you get to go hire a line editor. You need to make sure they understand your genre. Right? This is true for structural as well, and it's certainly true for copy editing when we get more granular. But the line editor, in my opinion, that's really important that you hire a line editor if you're going to go that route, who knows your genre. Structurally, somebody who reads fantasy can look at a thriller and say, hey, structurally, like the plot doesn't really make sense because, right, Aristotle gave us this 3-act play structure that we're kind of all still using and pretending like we're not, but we really are. And so it's all kind of the same. You got to have a beginning, a middle, and an end. And if these aren't clear, your structural editor, regardless of their preferred genre, is going to be able to pick out those things. Better yet, just find a structural person who does read in your genre and you'll be good to go. But the point is, I find that line editors are really where I want knowledge of the genre to come in. So I want a thriller, somebody who prefers reading or writing thrillers as a line editor, because they're going to be able to say, I understand why Nick made this decision for this particular sentence or this line, and it's not technically correct grammatically according to MLA or AP, whatever, but I'm going to let it slide because it reads like a thriller, right? And they'll just know that intuitively, and that's what you want. And then third, the most granular edit you can get is a copy edit. Sometimes they call this a line edit, but really it needs to be a separate thing. This is where you find the typos. So this is where, a line editor usually will work on some comma placement, but this is usually found in the copy edit stage. They're going to move your commas around. I was accused at one point of sprinkling commas into my book like a drunk comma fairy. That was a quote from an actual 1-star review. So you got that. You're listening to a master here when that's the kind of reviews I get. But that was way back in the day. I've gotten better. I only use like 4,000 commas per page now. So I love me some commas. I love me semicolons. A lot of people don't like semicolons. I feel like when I drop a semicolon into a sentence, a couple clauses, I'm like a genius. I'm like, hey, nobody in English, certainly not in my Texas English class when I grew up, knew how to use this thing right. I'm just going to put it in there and you guys, yeah, enjoy, reader. I feel like a little pat on the back for Nick whenever I do that, right? But the copy editor is where they will argue with you about those semicolons. They'll say, hey, man, you're using way too many M dashes. And I'll be like, no, dash, I am, dash, not. I love M dashes. I love ellipses. This is where they're going to fix all that punctuation and hopefully work with you to understand your preferences if you do like M dashes, ellipses, semicolons, all that. So those are the three big main edits that you're going to hear of. And if you are starting out with your first book, third book, whatever, it is still viable. It doesn't matter what book you're on. It's still very viable to go hire a particular person to do one of these things. Most editors, especially these days, now that there's kind of a market saturation with services and a lot of author services for fiction writers, will do multiple of these things. They'll say, hey, I can give you a dev edit for 4 cents a word, but I can also do a copy line edit as well for a total of 8 cents a word. I don't know what the prices are these days, 5 cents a word. But that's, you can start to understand how expensive this stuff can get. I've seen dev edits at 10 cents a word. And so for a 100,000 word book, that's $1,000 just right off the bat, right? And so and then they deserve the money. They're doing a lot of good work, but we're going to talk about a way to kind of get around that, not because we don't like humans, but because we don't necessarily need to drop all that much money, especially when we're trying to figure out how to market this stuff. We need to save some money for ad dollars. We don't know if the book's going to work, whatever. All the issues we face as indies, right? So what I've done in my own career, what I've found is that I like to hold on to my precious little baby as long as possible before I let anybody else see it. That's partly because, again, I am a little self-conscious as a writer. I don't feel like I'm that good. So I'm not like readily, hey, let everybody go read my book. It's amazing. I want to wait as long as possible before anybody gets to read it. I also have found that my books just need a lot more work than I would have thought. Everybody likes to think they write clean first drafts. I'm here telling you I don't write clean anything. And so it just takes me a little bit longer or more time with my book in kind of self-edit mode before I release it. But I'll tell you my process. Most of I dictate. I talk into a little recorder, and that's transcribed by Dragon Dictate, which is atrocious and abysmal at actually doing anything it's supposed to do. And so it spits out like a 60% version of the first draft. So at least it's transcribed, but it's transcribed poorly. And in the years past, I have had to go through line by line and fix every little freaking word because it doesn't understand how to English. Whatever, I'm not a huge fan of Dragon. There's better tools these days. Apple's built-in dictation can transcribe almost flawlessly. Ditto with Windows. Microsoft Word has a built-in one. Google Docs has a built-in transcription tool. These days, what I do is I still use that. Handy recorder, I think it's the Zoom H1N. And I transcribe into that. I dictate into that. It's transcribed by Dragon, and then I take that rough text and I drop it into ChatGPT. Alternatively, you can use OpenAI. It's the same company, but their Playground has an edit mode where you can upload an MP3 file and it transcribes it for you. You give it a little prompt like fix the homonyms, do not be creative, don't change any of the words, just make them correct, right? So things like that. And again, we talk about that. Yeah, Wayne, Dragon is I just find it atrocious. Now, part of it is the recording. I'm not giving it a super isolated. It's not like this. I'm in a car. There's a little bit of background noise, but I'm holding the microphone close to my mouth, and it's a stereoscopic sort of a thing. It's got 2 microphones, and it does a pretty good job blocking out the background noise. So yeah, I'm not happy with it. Now, to be fair, I'm on the Mac version of Dragon, which has not been updated. It's like, I don't know, 5, 6, 7 years old now. And they aren't going to be updating it because Nuance, who runs Dragon, was purchased by Microsoft. So the Windows version of Dragon is absolutely better than the Mac version. But hey, I use what I got, and I didn't want to drop a bunch of money on a Windows machine just to drop another $300 on Dragon. I'm done with that company. I think you should be too, just because they suck. So hey, go away, Dragon. Anyway, so that's my process for the first draft. I get it into ChatGPT, it spits back out. I have to go chapter by chapter, sometimes half of a chapter, because it starts to forget, what I told it, and it starts to get a little creative, which I don't like. But I get it all pasted back into Scrivener, and then I've got a finished first draft. So not a rough draft anymore, but now it's kind of a first draft. Then I go and do my self-edit, which is checking over the text. So I read line by line and try to catch what I can, try to fix up what I can. Now, it's not going to have, and here's the beauty of ChatGPT or OpenAI or some kind of AI tool, it will not introduce typos for you, right? It might get spellings of character names wrong. I've got a character named Ember with an E, and it always comes out with Amber. So I have to just do a find and replace for things like that. Made up words, whatever, that kind of thing. It's not going to introduce punctuation errors. It's going to abide by whatever it's been taught, and it's the model it's been trained on. But it's not going to put a comma after every word. Like sometimes Apple's built, like the iPhone dictation will try to put punctuation in for you. It doesn't do that. It just uses what you give it, and it tries to make it look like a sentence. And so I find as thrillers, where I don't really worry so much about the floweriness of my prose, as opposed to maybe a genre like fantasy, certainly literary fiction, maybe even women's contemporary fiction. The prose matters a little bit more. The style of the writer matters more. I can get away with using ChatGPT to kind of dumb down the style because it's thriller. It just needs to kind of trying to get you there. All that to say, I do need to go through line by line and make sure that it's correct, right? I need to make sure it's right. I need to make sure that it does have the style that I want. Sometimes it likes to throw in adverbs that I didn't put in there, right? So I have to just check over, make sure it's doing what I told it to do. Sometimes it changes descriptors like adjectives that I really want in there because that is my style. I'm a little bit more sarcastic, or maybe the character's thinking something and it tries to make it cleaner, I want to go through and make sure that it doesn't do that. But the good news is I don't really need a copy editor at this point because there aren't that many typos. There might be like I said, a character name misspelled that I forgot to find and replace, but there aren't going to be any misspelled, the, articles, things like that. It's going to fix all that for us. So it automatically reduces our editing time by a lot. So that first part of the phase is my personal self-edit. What I have found is that at that point, the book is certainly publishable, and I've read indie books that are published that are worse than this, but I like to give it a little bit more because it's me and I don't trust my writing. So what I have is a couple people. James is on this. I think he might be on this call. He's one of my early readers. He reads it. I pay him a little bit to just kind of proofread and do a beta read. Now, James is human. He's not going to catch everything every single time. So I've got another person I pay to do the same thing. And so at the same time, these two people will read over the book. And these are just people that I've found over the years. And you probably have a few on your mailing list that would love to do this, especially if you give them a little bit of beer money, right? But I wouldn't recommend, paying, 10 people to do it. Just get a couple people, maybe 3 people, and they're going to give you feedback. And if you do it all at the same time, some of them are going to overlap. Like they're going to both find the same error on this one. But you're just going through and making sure that you've had a few humans kind of look at it. At this point, this is what I used to do back back 2019 and before, 2020 and before. I would publish that book in a heartbeat. That is good enough, with one caveat. I publish iteratively. I don't say this book is done and I'm never going to touch it again. Okay? I release the book literally for sale. I'll put it on Amazon, do all the stuff, get the cover and everything, release the book, launch the book. But the next 2 to 3 weeks, I'm still getting feedback from my mailing list and anybody else that leaves a review or that emails me, hey, I found a little thing here. This is making, the typo doesn't make any sense. Maybe this is a missing word that snuck through. Then I'll improve, fix the book, because ebooks can be uploaded and changed within hours, right? So we can just iteratively improve these books until 2-3 weeks from now, we're pretty much 98% perfect. And if no book can ever be 100% perfect, then hey, we're there, right? We're ready to go. And what I mean ready to go is then I'll start working on the audiobook and the paperback versions that are a little bit harder to change after the fact, right? So that's my published process. That was my published process. You may be listening and thinking, okay, the ChatGPT kind of helps with the line edits, and then your 2 or 3 people that read it over may help with the copy edits, and then anything left over, you iteratively release. But what about the structural edit? What about the dev edit? That was a big piece that was missing. And so what I decided was I'm going to go look at how much developmental editors cost, and I'm going to pay somebody to do it. And then I got scared and didn't do it because they're so expensive. So when I'm self-publishing my own books, which is pretty much all I do now, and certainly what we do at Conundrum, which is my publishing house, we publish other people's thrillers, what I'll do is put together a group of people who are in the genre. So for me, that's thrillers. People who are professional, full-time, hopefully, just professional thriller authors who understand structure, right? So these aren't people who just write thrillers and don't know why they're successful. We can name some names on there, right? These are people who have kind of studied the craft and the art of building an outline and a structure and getting everything really well organized for a book to be, hold on, I'm getting something here, to be structured well. So, sorry, I had a note come up. I put together a group of people, and I try to get 5 thriller authors, or 4 people, including me, because I'm a thriller author who studied the craft as well. And I put them on a Zoom call with the author of the book. I call it the round table. So Conundrum's process, we have the round table of thriller experts. Now, these people are here on this call not to poop on the author and their work. They're there to make sure the book is as sellable as possible to the thriller genre. What I have found after doing this for 10, 15, 20 books now is that this roundtable is really powerful for 2 reasons. One, it's a graceful and kind of fun way of giving author some feedback before they start the process or while they're in the process of writing. And 2, where you kind of lack with a developmental editor sometimes is that these people understand how thrillers are sold and what readers want. Right? And so you can replace this with your genre. Developmental editors who are very, very good at developmental editing aren't necessarily very good at marketing. Right? That's not their job. And if they work at a traditional house, right, their job is editing books, and that's all they're thinking about. They're just trying to make books that work better on paper, but they're not thinking in terms of marketing or selling to a particular person who reads that genre, right? So when I put a roundtable together, we can actually ask questions like that. Well, most people like, this style of rugged contemporary, action adventure hero, rather than the one you've got, which is a little snivelly and kind of depressed. Like, can we, they'll be able to kind of guide the author in that structural change. Now, with Conundrum, the rule is it's the author's baby and it's their decision. So at the end of the day, they get to say, yeah, I'm going to take that advice or not. We urge them to take some of the advice, but they don't have to take all of it. And so this roundtable process, if we do it right, we get an outline from the author that's in detail and in depth, and then we use the outline as our developmental process during the roundtable. Sometimes the author's already finished the book or republishing something that's already been written. We'll still do this process, and whoever has time to read the book or go through it at least, to skim it for structure, can bring that. But we've got people on the roundtable who will read the entire book every single time and then give the same feedback. So it's been really, really powerful to use this tool, this roundtable, as a sort of structural developmental edit. And again, if we do it right, it's before the book is even written. So we can help the author kind of guide that structure to produce a book that is marketable to that particular genre. And that's what we want from a structural developmental edit, right? Because we're not talking typos and stuff at this point. We're talking, does this book work? And to answer that question, you say, well, does it work for what? Does it sound fun to read? That's kind of what developmental editors do right now. But this roundtable process answers the question, does it sell to this market we're trying to target? So that's why we've adopted that process for the developmental edit. And then we go through the other 2 processes that I mentioned before. And mine, that middle line edit sort of line edit process kind of is hand in hand with ChatGPT and all that. What we found at Conundrum is for people especially who don't dictate and don't do the ChatGPT thing or have any kind of AI tool to go through it, we have a process called the Gauntlet. And this is an AI-driven line edit process. It uses tools similar to, so think Grammarly, ProWriting Aid, even Microsoft Word's built in. They're using some large language model, AI, basically. What we're calling AI, to go through and find, any of these typos. It's kind of a copy edit, right? But the way we're approaching it is we do all of these things and then some, and we've, kind of got some other tools that we use. We're just trying to see what these resources, what these tools see as glaring problems in the actual lines of the actual sentences, right? Are there big grammatical things to look at? Well, we pop it through the Gauntlet, and it shows, okay, all of them are saying this line is bad. And then we read it and we go, oh, yeah, that doesn't kind of read very well. Let's go through and change that. Let's ask the author. We'll track changes, send it back to the author. Now, this is saving us money and time because we don't have to pay a line editor to do this. We can use all these tools, and then our time is reduced to an hour or 2 per manuscript, and we can go through and make edits and changes and recommendations and notes and all that same stuff that we would get from a line editor, but we just sped the process up with some of these AI tools. Right. Now, I'm going to pause here because a lot of people are going to come at me with the pitchforks and go, yeah, but you can't just use these tools and publish a book. I know. This is just one part of this big process, right? And so if you use these tools for what their intent is, which is part of a larger process, then you're going to be totally fine. You don't have to pay a line editor to do all this. You can pay them to just go through Grammarly and ProWriting 8 and Microsoft Word and all the other tools that you want to, and, have a book that is arguably almost as good as what a professional line editor would do, as long as you do the other stuff in the process well, the structural, gauntlet edit, whatever you want to call it, and then the copy edit. So that's the second phase. That is our gauntlet process, and then once the book is churned out of that, we call it 85 to 90% perfect. So we're still looking for that last 5 to 7, 8%, right? But at this point, the book is good. It reads well. It's structured as well as it possibly can be. The author's still got their style in there, and we've fixed it up and kind of put the scaffolding on. Now we're going to, frame it out. I don't know. Went into a roof analogy there, but a house analogy there. But we're getting the house is getting complete, and it doesn't have any leaks in the roof, I guess. But it's not done yet. So at that point, we want to bring humans back into it as much as possible. We want to let them check it out and make sure that we're not missing anything, that it still reads pretty well. And for that, we have a street team, a beta team of, I call it a street team because it's not really a beta and it's not really an ARC team. It's sort of a mishmash of both, of 200 people that I built over the years. My mailing list is kind of a proportion of my mailing list that wants to read more thrillers. And in exchange for a free copy of an unpublished, yet to be published book, they'll go through and, try to do it with a fine-tooth comb, right? They're going to look at it. These are the old librarians that are like, I just want to look and read books all day and make notes and comments and stuff and send them back to the author. That's what we want. So we have 200 of these people, and, it's a numbers game. About half of them will never even open the email, and half of those people will never even download the book. So we have about 50 people who will actually get the book, read it, and maybe out of those we'll get, 30, 40, 50% of them that will actually send usable feedback. So your margins get reduced and stuff, but the bigger you can make this crowd of people and the more interaction, engagement you have with them, just like any other mailing list activity, the better they're going to be. But after the gauntlet, after the roundtable, we send it out to this street team, and they go through it, and they find that last 5%. So now our book is at 95% perfect, maybe even 96, 97% perfect, and it's time to launch it. It's time to release it. We always give it to the author if they have any last-minute changes, but there's usually not a lot of time to do any kind of substantial rewrites. But hopefully they don't have to at this point, right? We launched the book, and we won't talk about it, but we do a soft launch process at Conundrum, which is we don't worry about big launch day promos because Amazon kind of screws with ranks and stuff anyway for the first few days. So we just sort of soft launch it. And because we release iteratively, we want that early 2-3 week feedback to come in from real readers and actual people out in the wild who grabbed the book and read it and said, hey, I found one little typo here. We fix it up, and then we start that paperback and audio process, right? So that's the whole process in a nutshell. And by the time it gets after launch, that 2 to 3 week mark, that's about as good as the book's ever going to be, right? Now you'll realize what we haven't done is paid one particular human editor. We've done some individual stuff. I might have paid somebody, $50, $60, $70 to read the book as like kind of a proofreader, and just get their take on it, which is kind of a mix of developmental and copy editing kind of all together. But we haven't paid $3,000 for a substantial edit. Okay, we've just used tools that are inexpensive or free that you already have, and we've used crowdsourcing on the last part of the process to find anything that's fallen through the cracks. And I have done this numerous times, so many times now that I can tell you from a position of experience, this works. I tested this against using a real editor at my traditional publishing house, and I believe the books that I'm publishing with this cheaper process are just as good as the ones coming out of the professional edited, the guys who are getting $3,000 a book process. No, that's my experience. Your mileage may and certainly will vary, but I wanted you to hear it because there's all these little pieces to it that you can say, hey, I don't have to do the whole Conundrum or Nick Thacker process, but I can do a piece of it. I can certainly, make my own gauntlet. I can certainly build my own roundtable of trusted, like-minded authors, maybe friends of mine who want to go through and read outlines together. You should be thinking in terms of how can I take this daunting process of editing a finished manuscript into a publishable work and break it down into the core features that the core things, requirements that a book needs in terms of editing, to save you some time, energy, money. Because that time, energy, money is always going to be better spent by you, the author, writing another book or marketing the book that you just wrote. No one cares about your book as much as you do, so you should be the one in charge of marketing it, and you shouldn't be the one editing it because you care about your book too much. You don't want to change it, and that's a psychological trigger, that flip that we can't really switch. So I'll stop here. I'll answer some questions too as we kind of go through. So yeah, I'm looking at the Facebook group right now. It looks like I haven't dropped that at all. So if you got a question about any of that process, drop it in there, or a comment, drop it in there. I can see the last 4. So if you had one before, just re-up, just copy paste it, or write it again, and I'll see it come up. But Matt asked, what do you think about listening to the book as part of the edit process? Personally, I don't do that. It doesn't work for me as far as time constraints go, but it absolutely is a valuable process in terms of effectiveness. There's a company called Edit Out Loud. I think that's what they're called. They have an app, and it's basically, you just listen to it on your phone. You upload your manuscript, and it's like an AI voice, right? Which is probably pretty good these days. The last one I tried it was like a kind of a Siri quality, but it's kind of good because you want this robotic voice so that you can force yourself to kind of hear any missing words. And as you go, it's been a while since I've used this app, but it was kind of fun. I tested it out, and they were starting out. Your manuscript, it like reads it to you, and then when you hear an error, I believe you click the screen, and it just kind of highlights a section. So it's not going to catch everything perfectly right there with the highlight necessarily, but you get it, and you can kind of search around that afterwards to find the typo. But the reason they do it that way is so you can just constantly, you just don't have to stop. You just listen and click and click and click until the book's done, and then you go back, export your book again, and you have these highlights that it's, okay, I got to look in here. There was an error here, right? And this speeds up the process so much because audio is a great way to hear any unintentional words or typos that you may have missed, misspellings, things like that. A lot of people, swear by doing it that way. They want to hear their book, and that's the better way to edit. Well, this is a great way to do that because it kind of doesn't let you edit on the fly, which, you'd stop, pause. Okay, let me find it. Let me load it in the manuscript. Okay, let me do a search. Like, oh, I can't find that. Is it this sentence or this one? I'm seeing it twice. And then all of a sudden you spent 10 minutes finding one typo. And then you go back to the thing and you edit, and it just eats up all your time. Right, so Edit Out Loud, or this app that I'm talking, I think that's what it's called. I'll have to find it and link it. It does a great job of kind of keeping you in one mindset, one mode. Right, you just listen and click, listen and click, listen and click, and then at the end you export that, and then you're in editing mode where you're finding these things or doing a search and replace or whatever. But generally speaking, yeah, I swear, I mean, it's a proven process. If you can afford the time commitment of sitting down and listening to your book in real time. You don't want to do it faster, right? Because you're just going to miss more that way. Maybe pull up the audio on one side on your screen, and then or Scrivener, or you listen to it in the background. I don't know, and then go through your file as it's reading it to you, whatever you write in, and then click, or highlight something. Hit the highlight tool, whatever you're using, right? You have a highlight tool, and then highlight it every time. So you can do the same thing using your computer. But yeah, whatever that process needs to be. I don't do that. I don't want to be in front of my computer during the day. If I'm going to go write, I'm going to go dictate. And if I'm going to edit, there's going to be a beer nearby and a fireplace, and I want to just kind of be in that mode. I don't want to listen to it also. And so anyway, yeah, it works. It depends on your own process. Joan asked, so you published the ebook first to catch errors, then publish the paperback? Yeah, I just, again, I'm like the laziest person I know, and so I want to do the easiest thing possible. And for me, publishing the ebook is easy, but it's also easy to change after the fact. Far easier than changing a paperback or certainly an audiobook, right? So if you have a human narrator, right, you're gonna go back on all these edits and errors. It's gonna cost you more money and more time. And you have to pop it in there. If they don't record the entire chapter, but just the typos, you have to put it in edit tool, right? So it takes forever to change that stuff. So I want to have the cleanest possible version when I give it to a narrator as possible. Now, most human narrators are smart people that will fix the stuff on the fly. If they're reading it and they know that there should be a pause, they're putting their own artistic bent to it anyway, right? But if there's a word that they know is misspelled, they're not going to pronounce it the incorrect way. They're going to just fix it on the fly. So usually the audiobook will be better than even the book you gave them. But these days, you know me, I use AI narration too. And so those tools aren't going to fix any of this stuff. So if I put in, TEH instead of THE, it's not going to just fix it to say the, it's going to say te. And that doesn't make any sense. And so, but it's just a computer, it's just a robot. And so it doesn't really know that stuff. So for that reason, and then paperback, hardcover, whatever, all the print editions, far easier to change than audio after the fact. But I still have to open a vellum file. If there's any, substantial changes, the page count might shift. And that's bad because then we have to spit out a new cover, wrap, and then re-upload the whole thing, including the cover, and it just gets to be a big mess. So I only want to do that stuff one time, Joan. I usually will publish the ebook, or I shouldn't say usually, I always publish the ebook and wait a few weeks. No, I shouldn't say all the time. I've been changing that now to try to get my beta team on board before the launch, so that I can test launching like audio, paperback, and ebook all at the same time. That's just a business test. That's not really because of any editing. That's just I'm trying to see if I can make more money launching all three at the same time. So I'll let you know how that goes. But yeah, so I want the books to be as good as possible before anybody sees them, obviously. I just know that they're not perfect. And so I usually will allow the first few weeks of launch to just let people kind of filter through and read the book and hopefully not review it poorly, but just send me an email and say, hey, I found a typo. Do you want it? My buddy Kevin Tomlinson, he puts in the back of his, I think he still does this, he puts in his books, hey, if you find any typos or errors, send them to me. I've got a form on my website. You can just go fill it out and tell me exactly where they are. And that's a cool thing because his call to action now is, hey, don't go leave a review and poop all over the book. Just go to my website, fill out the form, and I'll fix it right away. And so that's a good option. I don't do that because I want the first call to action people see at the end of the book to be go leave a review. Because it drives more sales and all that stuff. So I kind of shoot myself in the foot by doing it that way. But I'm thinking in terms of marketing, not making the book better and better. Just because I have a good process up to that. Kevin, I think, just self-edits. And I don't know. I think he just does multiple rounds of self-edits. He also writes extremely clean first drafts. And I can attest to that because I've co-written with him. So Joan says, I've got 8 beta readers who find errors and give feedback as part of the process. I think that's kind of something I didn't mention, but if there's any gain here for those of you using beta team that you can implement right away, it's try to formalize that process a little bit more. I remember when I got started, I had people asking me, hey, can I just get a free copy of your book in exchange for some edits? And I would, oh, that's really cool. You're doing the work for me. Great. And over the years, I've kind of built I had a team of 10 or 15 people that would do that. And then I got smart and said, hey, I'm going to formalize this to get this team to be big. Now, 200 people may be your entire mailing list, and you don't want to just be giving your book away for free because then people are just going to get it for free. You're not going to make any money. But pick a percentage, size-wise of your mailing list. If you have, maybe it's 1%. So if you have 2,000 people on your list, maybe you have 20 people on your beta team. You're shooting for that number. That seems to be a good. So I have 100,000 people on my mailing list. So I have 200 people on my beta team. I can't do math. Is that 0.5% or is that 2%? I don't know. I think it's 2%. Maybe not. Anyway, whatever that percentage is, pick it and try to get that many people onto a team and formalize it. So say, hey, you're my team, a separate mailing list. Just go into you guys. You're my special people. You're going to get free books. In exchange, you're on this team, and I expect this, whatever it is, and lay it out for them. I'm saying, hey, I'm giving you free work here. I'm giving you free books. You're on my list because you like these kind of books. So let's just be open and upfront about it. I expect you to leave a review at the very least. I also want you to give me any feedback, and it can be a sentence. Hey, I liked the book. It was great. But if over time, I'd love to build a relationship with you, person, in terms of, giving me feedback that's actually useful and helpful to make me better. And you don't have to have, I had an assistant a long time ago who was like super threatening. She was like, if you don't do it, I'm going to kick you off the team. I still will kick them off the team, but I'm going to do it quietly. If they're just sitting there getting free books over and over again, I'm going to find them and I'm going to kick them off silently. They'll probably never miss me. And I'll never miss them. You don't have to necessarily come out, guns blazing and go, if you don't do this the first time, I'm going to kill you and I'll kick you off my list. But you can also say, hey, I've got a lot of people that are trying to be on this list, and so it's kind of a revolving door. If you're feeling like you want to take a break, or if I haven't heard from you in a while and I've given you 3 books, I might move you off this list and back into my main list and bring somebody else on that wants to be on. So setting up this process, and you can automate that however you want. People, I have a form on my website where people can go sign up for that, and I try to vet them and all that. I don't really have any good ways of doing that, but there are services out there. BetaReads.io, is that .com? There's some. You just search beta readers. There's some companies. There's one of them that's not as good. So I don't want to just go recommend one. There's one that's great, one that's not as good. But yeah, there's services out there that will kind of put this stuff together for you. And the good one that I'm talking about actually has a way to upload the manuscript to their website, and people can do it chapter by chapter. And like the whole thing is like this portal where they can go log in and interact with your book chapter by chapter, highlight stuff even. And so people use that. Reader Links I think has something like this, although I don't think that's as polished as it should be. So it makes it a little tricky for people to log in and use. The last time I tried it. But yeah, there's all sorts of tools now that you can do to kind of formalize your beta reader team. And if there's nothing else that you're getting from me, I think that's the big takeaway, especially you, Joan. Like, try to formalize that a little bit more, or at least better than it has been. Because over time, if you build that group and they know that you're there thinking about them, and you maybe give them some freebies, whatever, no strings attached kind of stuff, they will give you really, really great feedback and really great, advice. Let's see what else in here. Yeah, Randall says, I have an ex-operator and ex-FBI guy to make sure that stuff is accurate. Otherwise, it's one editor for everything. She's brutal. This is something we didn't talk about. But yeah, if you're writing anything with military and thrillers, certainly, like I said, there's a gun in every book. I got to get the gun stuff right. Now, there's the gun porn guys who will come on and be like, well, there's no safety on a Glock. 1 star. This author sucks. But to be fair, that's easy research to do. You don't have to go to a gun range and rent a Glock to figure out that there's no safety on them, right? By way of example, I may or may not have ever done that. The point is, know your stuff as much as you can, and if you feel weak in a certain particular area, this is the easiest, freest editing you can ever do, and that is find somebody who's an expert and just ask them questions. People love talking about their subject matter expert areas. Sorry for the dogs. Right, so if somebody is, ex-military, FBI, CIA, whatever, Go talk. See if they'll talk to you. They'll tell you if there's stuff they can't talk about. But you can ask whatever questions you want, and they can say yes or no, and they can answer them. But this is a great way to get into their heads, to get into their psyche, so that you can write that in your book. And it saves a lot of time in editing because, again, by example, I did this and put something in there that needed to be researched, and so I missed it, and then my editor had to go down a rabbit hole, and so that cost money. And I didn't have to pay for it because it was a traditional publisher, but she did a great job coming up with all this research and put it in there, and then made a note in Microsoft Word on the track changes, and I got to say, yeah, this is great. Let me rewrite this. So yeah, if you can find somebody to help during the writing process, or maybe after the first draft, before you give it to somebody else, give them some questions. Don't just give them the whole book and say, what do you think of this, military person? Give them some specific questions. If they don't read, particularly a lot or in your genre, they'd prefer that, honestly. You send them an email, hey, can I ask you a few questions on this book? And they'll usually love to talk about it. As Randall just doubled down. Yeah, retired people love to help authors, and they have all the time in the world. Absolutely. When they're not on my HOA board, they love talking about their stuff that they did back when they were young and supple. Joan said yours is quite formal. Well, good. Okay, cool. Yeah, maybe you didn't need. I don't know the intricacies of your particular beta group, but yeah, if you've got something already, that's awesome. You should trust them in their comments. If you don't trust them, get rid of them. Get somebody in there that's new. But if you don't have one of these, if you're not like Joan or me, maybe that's the thing to set up. Go figure out from this mailing list I've got, what's 1% or maybe what's 10%, and get that number of people in a separate list, a separate group on your mailing list, and just say, hey, I'd love for you guys to do this, and here's what it looks like, here's what I expect. Can you commit to that? Now, I want the feedback within the first 2 weeks because I want to fix it, like I said, iteratively, all that. Or maybe you do it before publish date. You send it out to your street team, and they read it, and then you publish it 2 weeks later, right? So whatever it is, the process doesn't need to be mine. It should be there. And if you're not getting feedback from other humans, you're missing a huge, huge, huge hole that is probably in your book. You don't even realize it. I don't believe every author can just self-edit, and they're the only eyeballs that need to see it before they launch. I just don't think that's ever been... I'm not saying that every time you do that it's bad. The book is bad. I'm saying that your book could be better by just having 1, 2, or 10 people read through it at the end. Kirk asks, so when you use ChatGPT to clean up your narration, does Amazon identify that as AI-generated content? Nope, not at all. There are no tools right now that, and I don't believe there will be. Actually, I got interviewed by The Observer, and they were asking about this AI stuff, and I said the same thing. Like, there's so many false positives thrown as flags in these tools that can detect AI. It's a race, and the AI large language models, to be clear, to be more specific, are far outpacing the tools to detect them, and both are getting better. But it's going to get to the point, I mean, the large language models like ChatGPT, they're not trying to be AI. They're trying to be human. They're trying to sound human. And the better they get at it, the more impossible it's going to be to detect any of that stuff. So I don't see any of these tools getting closer to being able to detect stuff with any accuracy. I feel it's going to get worse. So, no, AI is no different. I mean, Amazon's no different. They're working on their own AI stuff, and they may have something that tries to detect it or flag it, but let's pretend in some universe that they have found something. There's no way. I mean, there's no way they could do it. First of all, unless ChatGPT was somehow watermarking its output, and it's not. It's just text. There's no way for anybody to tell. But let's say Amazon did. There's no downside yet to publishing that kind of stuff, and I don't see Amazon taking the tack of hurting people who are using AI generated content. Now, I say that in full knowledge that they have recently changed their process, not their terms of service necessarily. They put a little note in there, excuse me, but it's not legal. It doesn't mean anything because it's not specific enough. But they put in their process of uploading a book that you can now only upload 3 books a day, and that it asks you the question, is there any AI generated content? I always just put no. They're not trying to defeat authors like me, guys. They're trying to defeat authors who are cutting corners, who are using ChatGPT to generate 10,000, 20,000, 40,000 words in one sitting, and then not look at it and then just publish it. And that's crap. And it's never going to sell well. And if it does, it's an accident, and people will return it, and Amazon will ban their account anyway. You can take that on good authority. I mean, I work at Draft to Digital, and we're getting flooded with these submissions, but they're very easy to spot. So I'm not worried about using Grammarly or ProWriting Aid and saying I'm using AI. Yeah, I am. That's what we're calling AI. We're defining AI, which, again, it's not artificial intelligence. It's just a large language model. We're defining AI as any help from a computer. Well, we've been using that since Clippy in Microsoft Word, probably before that. So it's sort of it's a hard thing to define, and I decided I'm just going to define it the way I define it, which is unless I'm uploading large swaths of content written by ChatGPT, wholly unedited by me or any other human, then I'm not using AI to write these books, right? So ChatGPT cleaning up my text, I'm not considering that written by AI or even helped by AI. It's still my work, and I'm just using a tool to polish it that happens to be better than previous tools. So, anyway, you can argue with that all you want, and I'm not saying you are. I just mean it's hard. There's some ethical stuff to talk about in AI, and I know we've done that on a live call, but I'm not talking ethical right now. I'm not talking moral stuff. I'm talking as far as brass tacks goes, like what's by letter of the law. Amazon's terms of service says the word substantial, but then they don't define that. So what does that mean, right? If I upload a chapter that's written by ChatGPT and unedited by me, which I would never do because it's going to suck, right? It's going to be repetitive, and you guys have seen it before. It's not going to work. But even if I did that, is that substantial? Out of 72 chapters, that one of them is written wholly by AI? Or is it 50%, 51%, like Quorum, Robert's Rules of Order? Like, they're not defining this in any way. So why should I worry about it? If they don't even have a way to define what substantial means, I don't care which box to check. I'd rather just say, no, don't worry about it. I'm not doing that. What you're trying to fight against, I'm not doing that at all. I'm a real human being author. You can pinch me, I have blood, and I'm writing this stuff. Yeah, no, I'm sorry, Kirk. I didn't mean to sound combative. I knew you weren't arguing. I just said that anybody listening in the future, for the rest of time, can argue with that, and I think it's a hard argument because it's hard to argue against what I just said, I think, because there's not very clear instruction or explanation from Amazon et al. on all of this stuff. So, yeah, listen, that's about it. If anybody's got, hey, Gentry, welcome in. Anyone's got any last minute stuff? I have a very important trip to Costco I got to do, but I will pop in. I'll pin this on the group, so those of you who can't catch it during the day, losers, can come back later and watch it, and then leave your comments, leave your questions, and I'll try to get back and answer those as we can. I've been really slacking on the YouTube side. I know there's some comments over there from questions from people. So if you're over on YouTube, hello, I love you. I'll get over there eventually. So stick around. We'll be back at you next week. Should be good. Week after, I believe, maybe 2 weeks after, I'll be in 20 books. Probably won't do a live stream then, but hopefully we'll get The Office done, and I can show that off, and all the secret compartments I'm going to put in, and all that fun stuff on one of these live calls. We'll talk soon. Thanks for being here. See you next week.